Here is our retake video. So remember, you need to watch this video before you do the retake practice quiz, before you take the actual retake with me. So I'm just going to go through each of these problems and go over what the correct answer should be. You can feel free to skip around a little bit if you got certain ones right. You don't have to watch those ones. But I'm just going to do all the problems here. So first, on this sheet, I had a couple little typos that I fixed. So here, I just added in the angle symbols and the congruent sign. And then we'll do these two proofs. So proof number one, we know that the two lines are parallel, and we want to prove that the two angles are congruent. So we always start with what we know. Our first statement is that line H is parallel to line R, and that was given. These ones are only two steps, so our second and last statement is saying that the angles are congruent. To be able to do that, we have to decide what type of angles they are. So here's my angle 1, here's my angle 8. So looking at that, I see that they are both outside the parallel lines, and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. So outside the parallel lines and on two different sides of the transversal, one on the left, one on the right, that means we have alternate exterior angles. So I'm going to start with what I know. If the two lines are parallel. So if lines are parallel, then what am I trying to prove? Then alternate exterior angles are congruent. All right, there's the first one. The second one, very similar, except now I start with the angles. So right from the beginning, I know this angle and this angle are congruent. So angle 6 is congruent to angle 1. That is my given. And then I'm trying to prove that line T is parallel to line D. So just like before, we do have to decide what kind of angles these are. So when I look at these, they are not both in between the lines. They are not both outside the lines. So that means they're going to have to be corresponding. Oh, and I'm going to run out of room here. So if corresponding, and I'm going to abbreviate a little bit here, angles are congruent, then that proves that the lines are parallel. So start with the one you know, start with the one that was the given, and then the second one is what you're trying to prove, that the lines are parallel. So there are our little proofs. Next we have the identifying the type and solving for x. So for question 3, identify the type of angle pair. So this is just like what we did up above. So we've got this angle here and this angle here. So they are both inside the lines and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So this is going to be alternate interior. So you can just write alt-int. You can write it out, alternate interior. And then we have to solve for x. So here, alternate interior angles are congruent. So to solve for x, I'm going to set them up so that they're equal. And then I just need to solve this equation for x. So I'm going to subtract that 15. 45 equals 3x. Divide out that 3. 15 equals x. All right, next one. Identify the type of angle pair. So I've got this corner and this corner. So they are inside the parallel lines, but now they're on the same side. They're both on the right side here. So it's not going to be alternate interior, it's going to be the other interior. These are consecutive interior. So consecutive interior are a little bit different. They're the only ones that are not congruent. Consecutive interior is 180. So if we look at the picture, because I know that can get a little confusing, we should always notice that this angle is obtuse. We have one obtuse angle, and then if I look up at this one, well, that's definitely less than 90. That's my acute angle. So when the angles are one of each, acute and obtuse, well, they can't be the same if we have one of each kind. So that's how we know they're going to be 180. All right, so I'm going to add these up. 2x plus 110 equals 180. Subtract that 110. 110. And we get 2x equals 70. Divide out the 2, x equals 35. All right, last one on this page here. Solve for x and y. So in this one, we do not have to state what kind of angles they are, partly because we have two different types of angles. So we know this angle 68. Like I was talking about before with our acute and obtuse, the angles we're trying to find, neither of these are acute, but the 68 is. So neither of these angles equal 68. Up here on top, if I connected these two together, these are going to be a linear pair. So they're going to equal 180. So I'm going to do 4y minus 16 plus 68, and let me move this over, equals 180. I'm going to combine my like terms here. So negative 16 and the positive 68, those combine to make 52. You could separately subtract the 68 from both sides and then add the 16 to both sides, but I prefer to combine like terms first. So minus 52, 4y equals 128. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. And we get y equals 32. So there's our first answer. So now we need to see how this angle with the x in it is related to the others. So it's not any one of our angle relationships with the 68. They're not corresponding, they're not alternate exterior, they're not one we have a name for. So I'm going to look at how this 2x minus 24 is related to this 4y minus 16. They're both our obtuse angles, and so they are going to be the same measure. I'm going to do 180 minus 68. And that gets me 112. So this angle is 112, which means this angle has to be 112. So 2x minus 24 equals 112. 12. And I'm going to get rid of that line because I don't want it to look like we're dividing. Just this whole angle is 112. So I'm going to add 24 to both sides. 2x equals 136. And then divide out that 2. X equals 68. All right, and that is just coincidence that we got that same number as the angle up above. All right, so if you are trying to retake because you did not pass the first time, you really only need to focus on this page. If you're trying to retake because you want to improve your score, you can continue on and follow along as I go over the next page. But like I said, if you're just retaking to try and pass and get a 2, you can stop and take a look at the retake video. Or, sorry, not video, the retake quiz on Schoology. But continuing on with question 6 from the test, we know that these two lines, Q and R, are parallel. We know that these two lines are parallel. And we want to prove that this angle 1 is congruent to this angle 3. So looking at the picture, these are not alternate exterior angles. So I know a lot of people want to put that because they see they're both outside the parallel lines, they're on opposite sides of the transversal, but the problem is they're not on opposite sides of the same transversal. So that's why we can't do alternate exterior. But I'm going to start with what we know. Q and R, P and T, and that's all are given. And then I'm going to start connecting what I see in the picture. So while 3 and 1 are not alternate exterior, 3 and 2 are corresponding. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 2, and that is because they're corresponding angles. So if lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. Now looking at the picture, how are 2 and 1 related? Well, 2 and 1, they are alternate exterior because they're outside the parallel lines P and T, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal Q. So step 3, I'm going to say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 1, and then very similar, now instead of corresponding, I'm going to say alternate exterior. So if lines are parallel, then alt X angles are congruent. So now I've said everything I can say from the picture, so I just need to try and connect together some of my steps. So 3 is congruent to 2, 2 is congruent to 1, so they're all connected in a train. So to cut out that middleman, I can say that angle 3 equals angle 1, and that is because of our transitive property. All right, last one. Solve for x and y. So this one, we saw something very similar to this on one of our formatives. We need to look at consecutive interior angles. So those two angles right there add up to 180. So this angle is going to be 62. Same idea over here. These are consecutive interior. So 180 minus 122, we get 58. And then lastly, and there's a couple ways to think of it. So because of linear pairs, this angle is also 62, this angle is also 58, and now I've got a triangle. So we know within a triangle, angles have to add up to 180. So 62 plus 58 plus 3y equals 180. And like I said, because of that triangle. So I can subtract the 62 and subtract the 58 to the other side, and we can solve for y. But for now, I am going to combine my like terms first. 120 plus 120 equals 180. Subtract that 120. 3y equals 60. Divide by 3. Y equals 20. So that's y. The next one, trying to get our x, well, I see that x, the angle that has x is across from the angle that's 58, so they are vertical angles. They are congruent to each other. Add 25, and we get 83. Oop, not 38, 83. There we go. So now that you've finished this video, go try the retake quiz and then come see me when you're ready to retake the test.